You've been lied to about composting. Not intentionally, but the advice handed down through gardening generations has convinced you that piling up scraps, turning them weekly, and waiting months for black gold is the only path to fertile soil. Meanwhile, every forest on Earth produces richer, more vibrant soil without a single compost bin in sight. The trees don't hire gardeners to flip their leaves. The meadows don't stack nitrogen and carbon in careful ratios. Yet their soil remains deeper, darker, and more alive than most carefully tended garden beds. What if the answer to better soil isn't working harder at composting, but working smarter by copying what already works? What forests know that gardeners forget. Step into any woodland and examine the ground beneath ancient oaks or towering pines. That spongy, chocolate-colored earth didn't come from compost piles. It formed through a simple process that happens every single day. Leaves fall, twigs drop, and organic debris settles across the surface. Rain moistens everything. Fungi send thread-like networks through the layers. Earthworms drag fragments downward. Bacteria and microorganisms feast on the buffet laid out above them. This continuous cycle transforms raw materials into rich humus, right where it lands, feeding plant roots from the top down, without ever isolating materials into a separate processing zone. This natural system holds profound lessons for anyone growing food. When you rake up leaves and haul kitchen scraps to a distant pile, you're interrupting the very cycle that builds soil naturally. You're concentrating nutrients in one spot while starving the rest of your garden. You're creating extra work, losing valuable minerals to evaporation and runoff, and waiting unnecessarily for materials to break down before returning them to your beds. Nature doesn't work this way, because nature doesn't waste energy on inefficiency. Building soil where plants actually grow. Sheet mulching brings the forest floor directly to your vegetable beds without the tedious pile-flipping routine. Start by laying down cardboard or several sheets of newspaper over the area you want to improve. This barrier smothers weeds while remaining permeable to water and soil life. Next, you'll want to alternate layers of organic materials directly on your growing space. Start by putting down carbon-rich materials like shredded leaves, straw, or wood chips. Make this layer about 4 inches deep. Then, follow up with nitrogen-rich additions, such as grass clippings or vegetable scraps, and aim for about 2 inches thick. Keep alternating these layers until you've built up approximately 12 inches in total, and then, cap everything off with a final mulch layer to really lock in that moisture. The magic honestly starts happening right beneath this blanket of materials. Earthworms come up from below and begin pulling food downward. At the same time, fungal networks start spreading through the layers, breaking down those tough materials that bacteria can't handle on their own. Beneficial microbes multiply like crazy, mineralizing nutrients into forms your plants can absorb easily. Within just one growing season, this stacked system transforms into living soil that rivals anything you'd get from a traditional compost bin. The real difference here is that your plants benefit throughout the entire decomposition process, not just at the end. For kitchen scraps specifically, it's important to maintain a simple ratio that helps prevent problems. For every container of food waste, add twice that volume of carbon material, like dried leaves or straw. This 2-to-1 balance keeps odors under control, speeds up the breakdown, and ensures a steady release of nutrients. So, if you have a gallon of chopped kitchen waste, layer it with 2 gallons of shredded carbon material, and then cover everything with about 3 inches of straw. Within just a few weeks, worms will have transported these nutrients right into your soil, where plant roots can access them immediately. Green factories that replace compost heaps, huh? Nature also rebuilds fertility through living plants themselves. Wild spaces really show this off. Grasses, wildflowers, and shrubs are constantly cycling nutrients from deep soil layers back up to the surface, thanks to their roots and all that fallen foliage. You can, harness the same power by using cover crops that act like fertility factories right in your beds. Legumes, for example, deliver nitrogen without any compost involvement at all. Plants like clover, fenugreek, and vetch form these amazing partnerships with soil bacteria, which actually capture atmospheric nitrogen and store it in their root nodules. When you cut these plants down and just leave them as surface mulch, that stored nitrogen becomes available for your next crop. And grass family members like rye or oats, well, they offer different benefits. They catch leftover nutrients before they can wash away, protect bare soil from erosion, and produce a whole lot of biomass that, as it breaks down, turns into stable organic matter. The practical approach works beautifully with timing. Seed your cover crop mixture in autumn after harvesting summer vegetables. Let these plants grow through winter, protecting and feeding your soil when it would otherwise sit exposed. Come spring, cut them down at soil level, but leave the roots undisturbed underground. Lay the cut tops across the bed as mulch. Within a few weeks, you'll notice increased earthworm activity, improved soil structure, and enhanced microbial populations, all without touching a compost pile. Why piles lose what matters most? Traditional compost piles hemorrhage nutrients through several pathways that gardeners rarely consider. High temperatures drive nitrogen into the atmosphere as ammonia gas. Every rainstorm leaches water-soluble minerals through the pile and into the ground below, where they often wash away rather than feeding your beds. Each time you turn the pile, you expose fresh material to oxygen, accelerating decomposition, but also releasing more nutrients as gases. By the time finished compost reaches your garden, a significant portion of its original fertility has vanished. Decomposing materials directly in your beds prevents these losses. Nutrients release right where roots can capture them. Soil organisms process materials continuously rather than in isolated batches. The living soil food web remains intact and active throughout the year. This closed-loop system, really mirrors what happens naturally in ecosystems that sustain themselves for centuries without any external inputs. The method that actually saves time. Gardeners often say they compost to avoid waste, but honestly, moving materials to a pile, keeping an eye on moisture levels, turning everything regularly, and eventually spreading out the finished product, well, that creates a lot of extra work. The forest floor approach, though, it just eliminates all those steps entirely. Organic materials go directly onto your beds, right where they belong. Decomposition happens automatically thanks to the existing soil life. You never have to pick up a pitchfork to turn anything. You never have to wait months to use partially finished compost. And you never need to haul heavy materials across your property over and over again. This approach also keeps your soil biology active all year round instead of creating those feast or famine cycles. With traditional composting, all the action is concentrated in the pile, while your garden beds mostly sit dormant until you add amendments. Continuous surface feeding, on the other hand, keeps those microbial populations thriving constantly. That builds resilience against pests and diseases, and it improves nutrient availability for every single crop you grow. Making the switch doesn't mean you have to give up your compost piles or change everything overnight. You can start small, just pick one bed for the forest floor method. Layer your materials as described, keep an eye on the results, and compare that bed's performance to your traditionally composted areas. Most gardeners who give this a try never go back to pile-based composting once they see how much less work it is and how much better the results are. Your soil doesn't need processing plants or holding tanks. It needs the same treatment that's created every thriving ecosystem since plants first colonized land. So, stop isolating fertility in bins and start spreading it right where it belongs, on the surface of your living, breathing garden beds. For more soil-building strategies that work with nature instead of against it, make sure to subscribe to Crop Corner and share this guide with fellow gardeners who are ready to trade their pitchforks for a smarter approach.